So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you are in the world. I'm your host, Mark Edwards, and this is the Channel Zone podcast. My guest today is Steve Dawes, the Chief Growth Officer at syclonX. Now, Steve has spent nearly 5 decades in business-to-business sales and growth roles, working with some of the most influential organizations in the history of enterprise selling. He began his career at FMCG giant Mars, before joining Rank Xerox in the mid-1970s. Now, that's a place and a time that many people, myself included, would regard as the birthplace of modern solution selling. From there, he went on to work at other legendary tech companies such as Wang and Oracle in the 80s and 90s, and into the 21st century with the likes of Citrix and Res and others. Always helping organizations to grow in complex, high-value enterprise environments. Now, what makes today's conversation special for me is that Steve was actually my inspiration for moving to London and entering the world of B2B sales back in the mid-1980s, where many musicians will herald the Beatles' appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show as being their inspiration to become a musician. For me, it was Steve turning up in the music shop that I worked in back in the 1980s in Swansea. So this is as much a personal conversation as it is a professional one. During the show, we'll talk about syclonX and what they do today, and we're also going to dig into Steve's early experiences, particularly the Rank Xerox years, to understand how great salespeople were trained, how they were managed, and how they were developed long before CRM dashboards, mobile phones, and LinkedIn existed. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Really, really great to be here, Mark. I'm suitably embarrassed by that gushing introduction.
It's a fun intro, and I said, but as I said, true on every point. So let's see what we can unpack and reveal to the audience as we go through our chat here today. But thanks ever so much for taking the time out and joining us here. So for those who don't know syclonX, let's start with that. How would you describe what the business does? And what are the plans for the business?
Well, essentially, what syclonX is doing is working with a couple of vendors fundamentally to really unpack the potential benefits for AI and also secure AI through the browser. So there are two elements at the moment that we work with. One is essentially trying to guarantee your next AI project. It guarantee it won't fail because of the data, because of the bad data.
Right.
So that's one piece of technology, which a company called Shipshape Data. It's tough to pronounce that, especially if you've got a slight speech slur. Essentially, they're an AI readiness platform, shapes business data for AI success, which is a fundamental issue that a lot of customers need to deal with. I didn't want to go into a big pitch on this,
No.
but fundamentally, around about 85% of AI projects are failing right now. And they're failing in a lot of cases because people are rushing into AI and they aren't really taking the right time to consider their data and the context that brings to AI success. And on the other side, there's a company that we're working with called Acxiom, and they protect your data at the browser level.
Right.
Again, not necessarily going into too much detail over that, but since AI is coming through your browser, you're exposed at that point to losing intellectual property and important data back into the AI world. So that's what Acxiom's looking to do, is to protect you at that point.
Well,
that's enough of an advert at the moment, Mark.
Super. Well, much appreciated. Now with that out of the way, we can go into the dim and distant past, which is where I think our meat and potatoes lies here today. As I said, I'm a bit of a fanboy, really, aren't I? I mean, that intro kind of about with regards to, as I said, your background in sales, and I think it'll be beneficial for us to explore that in some more depth. So, if you started your career, I did term it right, FMCG, isn't it? Fast moving consumer goods.
Yeah,
I don't know whether they still use that term, but it was FMCG as a rep at Mars. Mars was again, I think, probably what the premier company in the FMCG arena to work for. You managed a territory, you told me, in South Wales. So,
Yes.
a couple of things. Tell us a bit about that role, and how did the Mars approach to sales? What did it teach you about, I don't know, discipline, standards, performance?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, Mars had a really, really good training program. Once you got into it was very difficult to get the job there, apparently, although I didn't know that necessarily at the time. Um, but you were up here. They brought you up to Slough to the factory, and they immersed you in the world of confectionery, which is what it was. Um, and they had a fairly rigid sales process, um, and you basically repeated that sales process on every call.
Right.
They also had very, very high standards for activity. You were required to be in your first selling call at 9 o'clock in the morning, and in your last selling call at 5:30 uh, in the afternoon.
Right.
And during that time, depending on what your role was, you had to deliver X number of calls. I think it was 22 calls a day, of which something like about 80% of them you were required to sell into. Um, and so that discipline of being at work at 9 o'clock in the morning, and actually before that, because you had to get to
Yes. Yes.
the your call, and then doing your paperwork at night and mailing your paperwork off. So you'd be working probably till about 6:30 every night just to get the job done.
Yes.
Um, they had great products. They had a limited number of products. So in comparison with the competition, which were Cadbury and Rowntree's then, um, Cadbury's probably had about 200 lines, and probably similarly Rowntree. Mars had about 15 to 20 lines,
Right.
and they all three were around about equal in terms of market share. So the Mars idea was to ensure that customers had enough product to last them through, and to make enough to display them properly, but not overwhelmed with stock,
Yeah.
which was the Cadbury and Rowntree approach.
Right. Was it
Called,
literally by
called,
numbers? It was just a
called
mass of
stock
chocolate.
pressure, it was
Right.
called. So Mars took a sort of more holistic view of their customers. They wanted, the whole experience to be successful and profitable. So I had a great time working there, really fantastic. They were very tough, and they used to they follow you around and check what you were doing, and not every day, but randomly.
Random. Yeah. Enough to keep you on your toes, I would have thought.
Absolutely keep you on your toes. Yeah, yeah.
This episode of the Channel Zone podcast is brought to you by In Connection, the trusted events agency to some of the biggest names in IT. In Connection knows that in today's fast-paced world, it's not just about delivering a return on your events investment. It's about delivering unforgettable experiences. Because some events fade within hours, while others become memories that are talked about for years. In Connection, the go-to event agency for the IT channel, creating memories that matter.
Not every day, but randomly.
Random. Yeah. Enough to keep you on your toes, I would have thought.
Absolutely keep you on your toes. Yeah, yeah. That was great, a really fabulous start to selling.
Yes, yes, and again, I can be, I can look back on these with rose-tinted spectacles, but I'm also intrigued as to the company car. This was of that era, as you said. We're talking. You do your paperwork of an evening, and mail it off. There was no fax machines. There was no mobile phones.
No,
You were a
no.
territory representative, basically untethered. The moment you'd go onto territory, you'd have your car. Um, so I have very fond memories of that kind of era. As I say, it was, but it sounds like they had kind of pretty strict performance criteria that they looked at, and you learned to be very, very productive.
Yes.
There was no alternative to it. I doubted. Just thought this coming to me there. Did your colleagues was there? Did you get salespeople who were only 20-30% of target? You know what I mean? While some were, or was it a very consistent? All the reps were doing their number.
Yeah, I think that the bar was quite high, so because you had great products, the big issue really was the quality of the display and um, sort of display share really.
All right.
Um,
Yes.
we were trying to control the best places to display the
Your
chocolate bars.
product. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have an awful feeling that you possibly at times also would spoil the display for your competitors. Was that
Well, we'd certainly move them in a. We wouldn't spoil it, but if they were in one of we would supply the display stands. They were our property,
right?
actually.
Yes.
Um, so there was an optimum layout. So if I found, for example, Cadbury's Dairy Milk where the Mars bars should go, they'd be moved back to the fourth or fifth row of the display.
Gotcha, gotcha. I would say I've got lovely memories of a little corner shop or a newsagent's and that rack of
Yeah,
display. I can't imagine what the price would be now. It's probably £1.50, £2 a Mars bar. The
probably is
Mars bar,
now.
by the way, is very small in comparison. So,
Yes.
so it was a great start, and I think we've talked about this before. Because I'm not a graduate. You didn't go to university either. You basically you're a kind of you started your life, but I think you started in many respects. If Mars was your entry into sales, I can't imagine that you could have even thought of getting a better entry point. But you then leveraged that, took that, and then moved into, as I said, what I would now regard, I think, Xerox of that era that you went in like 1976 or something. So Xerox of that time must have been, I would say, the premier sales organization in the world. So let's go
Yeah.
a bit from Mars into there. You joined, I think, in the late 70s. What kind of organization was it at that time? And also, I'm intrigued. What was the market like for photocopy? Was it a brand new? Was it many companies didn't have photocopiers perhaps at that time? Did they? It was a new technology.
Well, yeah, that's true. There were other methods of doing reprographics, as it was
Yeah.
called, I think. So you'd have there were electrostatic photocopiers, which were smelly things, and there were also things like stencil machines, and people were using those to duplicate things.
Duplicate,
So,
yes.
so you're all when you're trying to sell a Rank Xerox photocopier, you were looking because people didn't necessarily know that they needed it, and um, so you were looking for other ways they were producing, photocopies or copies or
Because you'd have had
duplicates.
places with typing pools at that time as well, I'm
Oh yeah,
thinking, was it? I
of
mean,
course.
many today won't even realise it, but as I said, even in a small office, there would have been a secretary there typing,
Yeah,
duplicating. There was a need for some companies, but even back then, I would have thought had requirements for massive duplicating. And you would were the machine was the range. Was it just? It wasn't just small desktop machines. It would have probably gone from small desktop up to probably quite large, 50, 60 copy a minute. I don't know. Did they have them in the 70s?
yeah. So, well, in the 70s, they had the fastest machine was something like 36 copies a minute, I think, from
Right.
memory. Um, and so a lot of the guys were trying to sell those, and then as just maybe the second year or maybe the first year that I joined them, they came out with a product which was something like 120 copies a minute, which was and it was very expensive.
You're right. That's print
Um,
room kind of
yes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So um, we were then. I mean, they were highly commissioned. You if you could sell those. And I was quite lucky, really, in the sense that I my first territory that I had was a tiny little town called Neath. Was the biggest town in it. It went in a little triangle across rural Wales, and I think it included Aberystwyth in it.
Right.
But anyway,
It's not a tiny territory by the end of it, then, by the sounds of it.
well,
Half of
tiny
Wales.
territory in terms of the amount of
Correct.
commercial
It was
businesses that were there.
99% residential and steelworks and collieries.
Well, actually, it was probably there weren't that many steelworks
Left at that time, yeah.
well, because if Neath was the big town, It didn't include Swansea or Llanelli or anything like that. Um, and I was working in new business, so I had to find new.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was great, and
Yes.
they changed my territory, and I got really lucky because I got Milford Haven and Pembroke, and they were
Right.
building um, oil refineries down there and catalytic cracking plants, and an awful lot of people, a lot of contractors were on down there, and I just was very lucky to get those at the time, and I just went mad in that
Yes.
year.
Was it a much of an installed base that you were upgrading, or was it all the time photocopiers? I'm assuming, like all technology, also, it is deflationary. They become affordable to many companies. At one point, maybe they couldn't even think of a photocopy; it'd be too expensive. And then the next thing you know, there's one that's so.
Well, it was a bit of both really because well actually um, the way that the business was structured is that it was quite well structured actually. So you had major accounts, accounts, and new business. So there was an installed base there that in new business we didn't have any sight of that.
Yes,
We were just the gunslingers going out there trying to sell, find requirements and fill them with photocopiers.
yes.
Um, so yeah,
Did you
the
have experience, Steve, of canvassing as I would have done? Was it, literally door knocking and going in and
yeah,
trying to find out?
well, with when I was with at Mars, the thing I didn't say was that we were required also to do at least two pioneer calls per day. So you'd go into somewhere like I was particularly good at that. Actually, that was the thing I was really good at. I'd go into a garage or something that, selling oil cans and, and filters and say, here's a huge opportunity for you. And I became one of the best guys at selling those new outlets. So cold calling was fun for me. I absolutely loved it. I even loved it when they were quite offish and they were trying to throw you out and all that. I used to really enjoy it. Um, uh,
But it was a great product as well, though, didn't you? I mean, it makes a big difference when you've
the
got
product
a
was
world-class product.
Yeah, the product was okay. At the bottom end, the product was pretty rubbish, I think, really. I mean, the in comparison with the Japanese products that were coming out at the time, um, we had the entry level product was you know pretty not even average. It was called a 660, and you had to feed the a sheet into it, so you couldn't
Right,
copy a book.
right.
So and that was people wanted to copy books.
Yes.
So then, I mean, obviously Citrix had a bit of a faux pas
Xerox.
there. Xerox were developing their products and they were looking at what the Japanese were doing. Um, but the Americans had their idea of what was right and what was wrong. And for quite a while, they didn't come out with a copier that could copy larger documents like
Right.
the legal guys wanted.
Yes, because was it the case that Xerox actually had they had the market to themselves for, I don't know, was it a period of time? Maybe it was
Yeah.
copyright or intellectual
Yes.
property, but they, as I said, I when I came to London eventually, it was for a Japanese company,
Yeah.
um, but it said Xerox. I think they may have had 7 years in which to basically lay the foundations for the whole industry. So, and much of it, I think, was replicated elsewhere. I think a lot of what we did at Konica or Ubix, as we were at the time, much of it would have been based on what Xerox was doing. So let me ask if I can then. So as I said, I think it's clearly coming through from how we're talking here. Xerox, in my opinion, mythical status. Not only with myself, but within sales circles. First, I don't know where they were, but it was NCR with John Henry Patterson. That was the first nationwide sales force in the US. 6,000 reps they had there eventually. And he was the gentleman that basically introduced all of the kind of sales productivity, honors clubs, presidents clubs. That's where they all started. And from NCR, that's where Tom Watson Sr. worked. He then moved to IBM and built IBM, who again, for a period of time, would probably have been the world's most highly regarded sales organization. But I think an awful lot of people came from IBM into Xerox.
They did.
So I believe Xerox went on to become the world's best sales organization. Tell me, if you would then, what was the training like specifically with
Yeah,
Xerox? What do you remember of it?
it was fantastic, actually. The first thing I remember is that you were sent pre-learning before you went on the course, and the course was a 2 week residential
Residential.
induction course. But you had to learn the material, and you had to learn a scripted demonstration of one of the products.
Right.
And I remember being in Wood Street in Cardiff with one of our sales managers down there. There's a few of us going on this course, and if you didn't get uh, the right answers, you were not allowed to go on the course.
Yes.
So you had to. So we were all
Right.
very, very focused. And then when you got on the course, you had to get over 90%, I think, to stay on the course.
Yeah.
Um, and then they, had these 2 weeks of selling sales training, which was absolutely fantastic. It really set you up for your job, the career, and an awful lot of the techniques there that, features, advantages, benefit selling, handling objections, opening statements, and how to close the deal and all the rest of
Right.
it. They were all, drilled into you, really.
Yes. A lot of
And
role playing.
or a tremendous amount of role playing. Um, and it was a real fun couple of weeks, actually. I mean, one of the things, I don't know whether this is relevant for this call, but we had a guy on our course who had 19 number one hits in the 60s. Um, his name was Gordon Waller, and he was in a duo called Peter and Gordon.
Right. Yes. I know. Yes. Yes. He
So
became a
Peter asked,
Xerox salesman.
he became a Xerox salesman. Um, and we, despite his protest, got him to get his guitar and entertain us in the evenings.
It wasn't it Peter Asher, was it? Did he say? Did he
Yes,
mention? There's a Paul McCartney connection here. Then he would have
there is.
undoubtedly.
Yeah,
Paul McCartney lived with Paul Asher's mum and dad for in Wimpole
yeah.
Street for 2 years.
And Gordon Waller was claiming all sorts of connections with Jane Asher. And I don't know whether I believe it all, but
That's
uh,
amazing. Yeah, but that's a pivot, isn't it? Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? As said, because
yeah,
they would have been, he would have had, they definitely would have had a few number ones in the US as well.
they
They would have,
did.
they were very,
Yeah,
very big.
they were
But then to
huge.
choose to literally come out of that and then moved into Xerox sales, I'm impressed.
But they'd obviously split up with Peter Asher, who went to California, and he ended up managing James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt and the Eagles. I think just incredible. And for him to for Gordon Waller to be a rookie salesman on a training course with us.
It is
uh,
quite something,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, an amazing little factoid. As you might have been able to tell, I'm going back through the Beatles anthology at the moment, so we've had numerous mentions of them so far. So you mentioned about the training. How I like the fact that they did the pre-training, and I also like the fact it's stringent. If you couldn't answer the questions, if you hadn't done what that test did, have you done the work? Have you done the pre-work? If you haven't done it, bye bye, off you go. You're not allowed to proceed. And again, I'm assuming what you're saying is through the training itself, you were being evaluated the entire
all the
time.
way
Would be my
through.
guess.
Yes,
And I don't know whether you were all living in the same hotel, whether the trainers were there with you. But as I said, I think there would have
yeah.
been all sorts of
There was a residential training center at Newport Pagnell,
right.
which was pretty infamous, really. And we were all staying there. I think the trainers were also there, really, but uh, we had a lot of fun there as well. We were playing
Yes, yes.
pool and
Oh,
having a
that
few
is,
drinks.
I gotta say, a fantastic era in my mind. So, was there a period when we were let loose on customers? So, was it in you then? So, you did your training. Were you then out in the field? Did
Yeah.
you start off canvassing, or was it straight out into here are your accounts, or what? How did you
No,
start?
you started off just going out with other salespeople.
Right.
So you'd go and spend some time, just understand the way they worked, and the uh, how the rental agreements worked and
Yeah.
all the rest of it. And then uh, there were a bunch of us. I think there must have been something like, I'm going to say four of us after two territories, or it might have been three of us after two territories. So
Right.
one unlucky guy didn't get a territory at that point, so he had to wait around and be a trainee for a while.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, as soon as you're given your territory, you're out there, and you're cold calling, and
Yes. And you said if you're with your colleague, that would be an interesting. As I say, you're in a car. You're basically living in a car with somebody
yeah,
for from 9 to 5 most days. The conversation. I mean, that's to me. And again, that's how. As I say you're kind of training by osmosis in that respect. You're watching a sales guy more experienced than you out in the field. You're coming back into the car afterwards, effectively, even in conversation. There'll be a debrief of sorts. You'll be asking
yes,
questions.
yeah.
Very powerful method, I think, of kind of mentoring, real mentoring, but not like, a 30-minute Zoom call for mentoring. This is, as I said, you'd be with these people pretty much for the entire day for a period of time. So it's no, you can see all of the positives to it. Some of it because of the lack of technology we had, as you said, because they weren't mobile phones, because it was all basically in-person selling, but it absolutely worked. So I say
And
I love those that period.
sorry, if I could just come in. I think one of the issues is, and you just pointed it out about the fact that you're learning from people when you're working alongside them or being
Yes,
alongside them. And I think there's since the COVID days when people have stopped going into the office, I sell technology, so I get the fact that you can get around. It's a lot more effective when you know the customer. Once you
yes,
have that relationship, but you've got to
yes.
build that relationship.
You
It's very
have.
difficult to build a relationship over Zoom.
Yes, I don't think. I said your character, your personality, does not transmit the way that it does face to face. And but my guess is also maybe, well, as I say, maybe sellers, customers also, in many respects, would prefer. They don't necessarily want to have a salesman come in to take an hour of their time. They need to get a meeting room. Yeah, they even find that nowadays. Some company got to find someone to meet. So there's a lot of reasons I think why they push back, but no, and it's not just because I said our early experiences were very much face to face. And the other thing I'm hearing from a lot of my customers today is that they want their salespeople back out seeing customers. They've kind of had enough of this. Everyone in the office, everyone literally on a screen with a headset. Sales offices as well. I don't know what the Xerox sales office was like, but if I look at the Konica Ubix sales office in Hatton Garden, circa 1986, I mean, it was a noisy, raucous. Um, I don't know. I don't want to say testosterone charge because we did have some women in the sales force, not as many as you might find today, but it was full of smokers. It was noisy. It was loud. Somebody would get a deal. They'd be running through the corridor. Bells on walls. You might have had them in the past. It seems to have
Yeah,
become very muted. The open plan office, I think, eventually meant you'd go in. Somebody would have to point out sales are over there, but you've got accounts payable right next door. So accounts payable don't like it when the sales guys are making a noise. So the sales guys don't make a noise. So the sales guys don't make a call. Or if they do make a call, you'll have seen it in many companies. They're out on the landing. They have to leave the sales floor and go on the landing where there was some space. So I don't know. I don't know. But they
well,
said,
I think that if I think back, because one of the things I did in Xerox after I had been down, working as a sales rep for a while, probably about 2 years, I got promoted up to work in West London, and I had a team of bandits really that I'd been given, um, and we ended up it was like Kelly's heroes really. Um, I had all the guys that one guy was an alcoholic, the other guys didn't have a driving license, and I could go through them all. They were rotters really. But essentially, I said, look, we can't fail here. We all want to win, so
yeah,
we're going to win. So we would come in the morning, and we'd have a team song. We'd be standing on the desks in an open plan office, singing a team song, doing karate exercises, and we'd be in there twice a day. We'd have a sales meeting twice a day to try and control what these guys were doing.
Right.
And in the end, uh, probably HR wouldn't put up with it today, what we were doing then. But um, out of the 9 guys in my team, 6 of them won a national competition
Right.
by just being together and as a winning team, as it were,
Yeah,
and
no, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
but they all the other teams thought we were lunatics, and
Right.
and we were. I mean, I came up from Wales, and there were 3 other new business sales managers, and I was given my team. They'd already picked the sides, so because I'd said to them, look, we all know who we are, guys. We all know that
We're the
nobody
underdogs.
else wanted you, and I'm new. So what are we going to do about it? It's a bit like any given Sunday. We're gonna fight our way out of this.
Correct. And you
And
were the Al Pacino on that,
I was
I
the
think,
Al
isn't it? Right, okay,
Pacino. Yeah.
absolutely. But
So
those, just sorry to interrupt there. The idea, as I said, of those sales meet, that was a huddle, wasn't it? That was literally, it was a team talk. It was, I
yeah,
know, because perhaps the other thing we hadn't mentioned earlier, which is worth putting out, you've got a very strong rugby background as well. I know you did a lot of rugby coaching in the
yeah,
not too distant past. But again, so what you're talking about there is very. There's a lot of similarities between how you would talk to a rugby team and get them to
yes,
perform, but
yeah,
you were doing it on, and it required the physical presence of those salespeople. It wouldn't have been easy to do if they're all disparate, dotted all over the country. You needed to be there, and I love what you say, twice a day, even at times.
yeah. We for the period of that competition, we were doing
Yes, yes,
twice daily sales meetings because
yes.
I knew I couldn't really trust the data they were giving me because it was all about, oh, I've done 50 cold calls today, boss. I said, okay, well,
Yes.
show
That
me the
was the norm.
compliment
Show me the
slips.
compliment slips,
Yeah,
and they'd take the corners off them to make sure they couldn't be resubmitted.
exactly, exactly.
But no,
Great
I
fun.
said very impressive. But that was that you say it was for a period of time for maybe a monthly or a quarterly competition, was it? It was just like we got
It was
something
a quarterly competition,
right,
and
and so for 3 months you could pretty much you could pump up that team,
yeah,
get outstanding performance from them. I don't know if we had a similar experience myself back at Conning. By the end of it, all exhausted and tired. I have to say
that's
that
exactly right. You
yes,
couldn't sustain
the
it beyond that.
following month was a complete wipeout. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? We were
Yeah,
just kind of exhausted from it.
yeah, yeah.
But you said a team song, and
Yes. It came because I was keeping them later and later because they were getting on my nerves. I was up
right,
there, staying in a bedsit in London, and my wife and daughter were down in Swansea, and they were so it's like, okay, guys, the numbers aren't there, and we go through it and go through it, and one of the guys was he was the older guy. His wife used to ring up and say, I've got his tea on the table, his dinner's on the table. So I said, well, uh, we're not going home until I see 2 creative ideas from you that's going to help us.
right,
And this old fella said, he was a North London boy. Well, he said, why don't my son does karate, and why don't we do like Japanese style of management, that team thing, and we
yes,
could have a song. We could have a song and so I said, right, okay, right, right. What's the song? He said, why don't we do When You're Smiling?
right,
So that was the team. That was our team song.
right,
So we did it, and it came from them. That was the thing
yes.
about it, and it made it stronger. And the other teams used to come in the morning to look at us. They'd come in, and we'd be 8:15 stood on the desk singing When You're Smiling."
It's fabulous to hear. Again, I'm going to link it back to the Beatles if you don't mind. But I mean, in the early Beatles days, before they got their recording contract, they didn't have because of course they were musicians, but they had a little patter whenever they were down. There was a phrase that John Lennon would kind of throw out there, and there was like a call and response to the. And if you think about the tightness of the Beatles as they would have been at that time, living in each
Yeah.
other's pockets, a collective goal. And what you're saying to me here, although selling is so often seen as an individual pursuit, uh, but what you're harking back, I would say this is a peak moment. And as you're talking about it, I have a similar experience at Konica. I can even tell you, January 1986, we were pursuing, at that point, there was an opportunity for me to win a trip to Japan. That month, as a team, we were with each other and pursuing the one goal to which I was the only one who was going to get the trip to Japan. As it is, the company unfortunately decided too many people qualified for it, so they cancelled the trip to Japan. Not a good idea on one of those, but I've heard of many incentives that have been withdrawn last minute. But that one, but I have said that approach to selling, and it's a lovely thing, Steve, don't you think? I mean, as I said,
Yeah.
to have that camaraderie, and I just think the examples you've used was it Kelly's Heroes and Any
Yeah.
Given Sunday,
Yeah.
and there's probably a whole bunch of other kind of team talk dramas or whatever that would feed into that. But it's super powerful. But we could spend all day there. I want to kind of move forwards if I can. And it just clicked with me when you mentioned the word reprographics earlier on. So I always saw kind of photocopier as a photocopier. But you then went from there to Wang. And of course, Wang at that time, many people, it's disappointing, many people haven't even heard of Wang. There would have been a time when you came in on the A4 or M4 into London. Wang had a kind of mirrored cube building, I think in the mid 1980s. They were pioneers. Anne Wang, the founder of the company, was absolutely a genius. Subsumed, I think, into maybe digital. They might have bought them eventually, but the point was Wang was word processing. So if I'm right, I believe they had a desktop calculator as well, but I think you were word processing. So reprographics, word processing. I can now see the connection there.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Wang, it was Dr. Anne Wang. Um, in fact, they went eventually, they were trying to be bigger than IBM at one point.
Right.
They're based in Boston or near Boston in the United States. Um, and they had their big advantage they had was they made the word processor and the computer much more easy to use for laymen. So they had the function keys, the F1, F2, and all those kind of keys on a keyboard.
Yeah.
They were all in English, and the because people would look at a keyboard and go, what the hell do I do? And so they made it. They had the technology, and they made it so easy to use that, for example, we'd have a senior partner in a solicitor's practice would come in for a demonstration of the product with his secretary, and we'd actually open it up with a whiteboard presentation.
Nice.
Incidentally, six
Like it.
technologies, and we'd say, so these are the six technologies. I can't even remember what they were now. Word, data, communication.
It is 40 years ago. I think that's
Yeah,
reasonable.
I could probably do it.
You probably could.
Graphics. Anyway, so we'd say, right, we're going to take you through this technology, and by the end of this demonstration, you will be, Mr. Senior Partner, will be creating and editing documents. And they go, so no, I don't,
Right.
no, 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 you will. So that worked every time because you'd say, okay, you imagine you've got a document and you want to insert something. Imagine what button you could have. Well, insert. So there's
Yes.
an insert button. Hit the
Yeah.
insert button, and then you just guide them through it. And it was it was a light bulb moment for them because they'd be thinking, hold on a minute, I could be actually billing extra hours when my secretary's gone home.
Yes.
So the technology would deliver that extra productivity for them, and invariably they would sign for the system, you know, after that demonstration, right?
Right.
All straight away.
Yes.
And you're talking really about like 40, 50 desktops. Um, they were
Hugely
big.
expensive too, Steve, if I
Yeah,
remember
yeah, they were
rightly.
probably about 4 or 5 thousand pound a desktop or something.
Back
Um,
then.
then, yeah,
Back then.
yeah. So they were, Wang was phenomenal stuff. We sold tons of it. It was a great company to work for, real fun company. Uh, we did a lot of sport, golf, and rugby and football. And the guy that ran the UK, a guy called Alan Davis, who's had a stroke recently. I went to see him. He was just the best guy you could ever work for. Great fun. Um, it was a tremendous lifestyle company, Wang.
Yes. Now, as I said, and amazingly, kind of disappeared.
Well, yeah. What happened was that Dr. Wang died,
Right.
and his son Fred. Means I remember that. Can barely remember my own name these days. So Fred Wang took over and ran the company into the ground, and it went to Chapter 11. Eventually, a lot of its technology was acquired by Microsoft.
Right. What was it?
Yeah, a lot of they had some great stuff. They like the word processing was acquired by Microsoft,
Right.
um, and other
Because
tech.
we're
I don't.
talking mid 80s here. We're talking maybe, I don't know where the word star might have been out there, but as I said, for many people probably listening, not of our age, probably can't comprehend what you're talking about. So the computer screen wouldn't have looked like it does now. We didn't have graphical user interface. You didn't have Windows.
Yeah,
It was DOS. It was like it looked more like a computer screen
yeah, it was
with text
a
prompts,
green
wasn't it? Green
screen generally,
screen.
or you could get a black with white lettering. But
Yes.
actually, thinking about it, the thing that really killed off um, Wang was the IBM PC and
Right.
Microsoft. Although the Wang had their own PC, it was better than the IBM PC, but um, it's a bit like Betamax and VHS.
Yes, yes, yes. They
Um,
built their reputation on word processing, and again, they
yeah.
dominated. Must have been world number one
Oh, they were. Yeah, yeah, by miles.
in that area. So listen, we could go on all day, but we'll come back. I can see you coming back in series four, Steve. But gonna kind of bring it to a close there. But just a couple of last questions. I've just passed my 40th anniversary of sales. It's 2026. I started in February 1986. 6 months after meeting you in Picton Arcade in Swansea. You've done, I think, 50 years. You're 10 years more. Half a century is extraordinary. Deserve many congratulations. And you have mentioned a name of somebody there, Wang. I was just wondering what the best advice ever anybody gave to you, or is there somebody maybe who's had the biggest impact on you as a salesman?
Well, the best advice I had from my early days was when a recruiter who was based in Bristol said, just remember, and in fact, this got me the job at Xerox. He said, when you're interviewed, they'll ask you, um, you know, have you got any questions?
Yes.
So he said, well, what you could do is to say to them, right, this interview is two-way, isn't it? When you're interviewing me, I'm interviewing you, and quite frankly, I'm impressed. What do you think of me? So it makes the interviewer, he might say, I don't think much of you, or
Right.
actually, I'm quite impressed. So you then say, oh, well, if you're impressed, I'm impressed with you as well. That's great. Um, why don't we just shake hands and
Close the deal here and
yeah,
now.
yeah. That
Brilliant.
was one of the things. One of the most, I think, there have been people along the way. My first sales manager in Mars, a guy called Jim Bradshaw, was a fantastic guy. Um, but I think recently, the guy that really impressed me the most is a guy called Mark Templeton, who's the CEO of Citrix at the time. He was the most approachable, nicest guy I've ever met.
Wow.
And he's been very helpful to me since with ventures that I've been doing myself. I regularly get to speak to Mark, and he is genuinely a fantastic guy who we all loved when we worked at Citrix. We would have run through brick walls for Mark, and because he brought emotion to the job. He loved the company, and we loved him.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant to hear. As I said, for somebody at the top of the business who could have been full of airs and graces.
Well, I compare him with others like Larry Ellison, who you weren't allowed to speak to.
Right.
And so they're, but as I say, Mark was just a fantastic bloke,
Oh,
a
that's
really
brilliant. That's
excellent
brilliant.
guy.
That's brilliant. That's great to know. So, look, my last question to you here then, with our sponsor in connection, I'm asking everybody who comes on the podcast this season to pick out their favourite or most memorable corporate hospitality type event. So, whether it's a President's Club or a special event for customers or partners, can you think of one? What's the most memorable event?
Well, I can give you two. I think President's Club in Phuket with Citrix was memorable. It was absolutely fantastic. Um, uh, it's really opened my eyes to the Far East over there. I think uh, it was just a thrill to win that, and I think I was going to tell you two there,
Yes.
um, so the customer event, which I thought was fantastic. Citrix used to run a thing called iForum in Edinburgh, and it was for European customers who weren't able to travel over to Vegas uh, or whatever. And on that particular time, the last time we had it, I think we had Jimmy Carr as
As the
the
host.
yeah, and he was told not to make fun of the Americans, and I don't think he heard that very well because he spent the whole of the time making fun of the Americans, um, and I think the customers and the partners especially loved iForum. It's a great time. You get to meet everybody over there, and you weren't necessarily meeting loads of all the American customers. You're meeting a lot of the local customers, and we were able to get awful lot of the technology across to them in the right sort of way it drove the loyalty. And I think when Citrix stopped doing that, I think it really damaged their reputation.
Right. And it was work and play, from what you're saying,
Yes,
was it?
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
mainly work, but there's a few drinks on the grass market in Edinburgh in the evenings. But no, it was a fantastic event actually.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah,
All right. Well, look, let's leave it there for today. As I said, thanks ever so much for joining me here. Thanks ever so much for coming into Picton Music back in 1985, as I said, and giving me, as I would remember speaking to you, you were probably the first blue suit, white shirt, red tie. I think you were probably BMW driving salesperson that I ever kind of met. And said, and had I not, I don't know. I don't know whether I'd be here now. You gave me. It took 5 minutes talking to you. I thought, well, if he can do it, then I can
yeah,
do it too. And
yeah. And you've done, and congratulations to you. You've had a fabulous career, and we hold each other in with mutual respect.
no,
So
that's super. It's super.
brilliant.
And here we are, 40 years later. Yeah, still online. So look, we'll do it again sometime, Steve. Thanks ever so much for today. It's been great. Until the next time, all the best.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Cheers.
Super.